Alright guys, welcome back to part 4 of my Another Perspective design talk-through. People seem to have been enjoying these videos and this content, so I figured I would just keep going with it. And yeah, I'll keep going until I run out of stuff that I want to say about this game. So, where were we up to last time? We were up to this lovely room. Now, as I was saying, I think at the beginning of part 3, this is another area of the game where I decided to lean away from the symmetrical structure of a lot of my levels. Again, forces you to sort of drink in this environment and think about how it's going to work. Unlike the last level, this level does do something sort of new that other levels didn't do, or did do, but not quite in the same way, and actually catches a lot of people out for a long time. And I think largely it is just down to the shape of the level. But this isn't a bad thing by any means. Like, this level is meant to be meant to be like this, and is meant to be complex in this way, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So we have this guy over here, and now there's already a natural assumption, even though there's the key floating above him up there, that when you swap to this guy and you swap back, you kind of get the feeling that whatever you need to do involves the corner on the right. You see these blocks that are kind of sticking up there on the right, arranged in a kind of strange little pattern with like a little pit or whatever. As I've already said before, you know, none of the blocks in the game are really there for no mechanical reason, and players seem very, almost unconsciously, on board with this at this point. So players already very quickly assume right away, without really even seeming to know right away why, to do this. Let me repeat that again. They see this pit and they know that this guy can walk down there, and because they just see this situation that they've encountered before of a pit, an area that they can get across to, and a guy that can walk on a tier below it, they already know what to do here, and they know to do that, even though they don't necessarily know how this gets them any closer to the goal. They're moving away from the door, they're not necessarily moving towards the key, but they know that that's the thing that they can accomplish, and they didn't really have anywhere else to go, so they can do that without really thinking too hard about anything else in the level. Now at this point, there's a trip up of the player in that it's not this character who, there's a role reversal suddenly of this character now needs to help the other character in some way get up, because this is the character that needs to get the key. So that already trips some people up, because some people will immediately try and do this. And this is where a lot of people, a really large number of people end up doing this sort of thing, and are just thinking how do I get a key? And it takes them a long time to realize, oh no, this guy needs to get to that key. But then when they move him out of the way to try and swap, they realize that he can't actually jump up there, and there's nowhere for him to stand so that he can get down. And that's the sort of complexity trap a player can end up stuck in with this little corner. And that's sort of the puzzle here. And there's this kind of slight potential misdirection if you're not 100% thinking about how to get to that key right away, and you're sort of not because of how you solve the beginning bit. There's this trap where you end up in this situation and you're not really sure how to handle it. Now the way to deal with that is to first of all get this guy on top of here as before, and then you can jump. Oh, sorry, no, I'm doing this wrong. You put him down in the corner, like that, before this guy gets there. Then jump him on top. Then use him. So you just swap it around, but the mechanics of, I even stumbled then and almost explained it wrong, of how you do that is confusing, and it's kind of complex, and it's it trips people up because they aren't expecting to do this sort of quick role reversal to get to this key. The solution itself is actually really straightforward. It's just that sort of little mental trap of skipping over the fact that you need to swap the two characters around that catches people. Then you get that key and you can fall down there, and then that key block disappears, which basically means you're able, and it's very clear to the player at this point. Like, no one really seems to struggle after getting that key. They come back to here and that key block is gone. Sometimes they don't even notice really that the key block is gone, but they see this situation, they know how to handle it. Of being able to just do that to get over there. The reason the key block is there, well, I mean, the key block, it defines that bit of the puzzle really, but like the benefit of it being via that specific mechanic is that you can see it disappear, so you know the next part of the level is going to involve this area of the screen. So we have another level here with 3 people in it. This one is designed in such a way that it should flow nicely from one to the next. Like, you should never have to like skip through 2 to do something. You never have to swap to one guy, then do nothing, then swap to the next guy kind of thing. You should never have to like do that. But anyway, this level, you know, you need to get this guy up to that key. First of all, in order to break open this for this guy. So how do I do that? Because this guy can't get down to that guy to help him up. But this guy can if he gets over there, so you can use this guy first of all. So again, from the start, you can use this guy to come down here, help this guy get up. I just realised I was wrong there about the designer's level. You do have to swap between... You have to swap to this guy, who can't actually do anything there. I didn't notice that. I did always think that this level was designed in a more strict flow kind of way. But yeah, there you go. Sometimes I'm completely wrong about my own design. So you bring him down there, so that then this guy has someone who he can stand on in order to get up here, to get to this key. But that is, even though it didn't quite work specifically there, it's not too big of a deal in that specific spot. The main idea is that generally it flows well from character to character. Then after getting that key, those key blocks disappear and you can swap to this guy, who has the floor beneath him, which is something you might not have noticed, and it makes you really hesitant to want to swap, because like if I swap to this guy now, for example, he's going to fall to his doom because he has no floor. Like if I just swap between them now, you see he's the only one with a big floor underneath where the key blocks are, the first guy is. And if you didn't notice that in advance, which most players actually don't, it can be very intimidating for you later on if you haven't remembered that. So as I say, you get up here, get that key, and then he doesn't actually need to do anything else there. And you bring him to here, and he stood on him. And there's actually a couple of times actually that you have to swap to a guy that doesn't do anything. That is something I have generally tried to avoid with the levels with 3 people in them, but it's a very difficult thing to avoid. Anyway, use him to stand on him to get him up there. That's sort of the final real challenge of this level, is just remembering that this guy can see this floor, which is kind of subtle, because it's not something that's important to you before that point, because the key blocks are always there. To use him to go underneath here, very clear path, stand under him, and get him to the key, to the door even. So this level is a pain for a lot of people. This level gets a lot of people stuck for a very long time, and it's one of my favorite levels in the game. Because the only reason it gets people stuck, well, I don't know if it's the only reason, but the main reason it gets people stuck is that there's just one extra logical step involved in the process of finishing the level that's very difficult to notice. And this, like, it's probably the hardest level in the game to get, in normal mode anyway. It's excluding mystery mode. This is probably the hardest level to understand. It is actually, it's like the solution is, in a relative sense, straightforward once you understand it, but getting there is very, very difficult sometimes. So at the beginning you have this guy in a pit, and he can't really get out of it, but you know he can see both these keys, and he can't, so he needs to get out of here somehow. Now this guy can get underneath this guy, so it should become obvious to the player what they need to do to actually get out there. get up to here. And now the player kind of has a choice of what key they're going to go after. Like, they can go after the key on the right, or they can go after the key on the left, but then they have no way of actually getting back up to the other key without the help of the other character. The problem is that when you collect one of the key blocks disappear, and when you swap back to this guy, you realize they were the only thing supporting this guy being down at that level. He has no other way to stand down here. So the moment that you collect a key, this character is essentially helpless and can't really do anything to help your character get to anywhere else, because he can only stay where he was. The moment you swap to him, he's just going to fall. There's nothing else you can really do. Coming to that realization is one of the hardest parts of this level. Because then it becomes clear to the player that they need to get both keys while still having access to this upper level, which is the solution. Like if I do the same thing and I make the choice to get to this key, and it's the fact that you have this choice that makes people take a long time, because like, okay, maybe I'll try getting the other key, and they realize they're in the same situation, and you'll be surprised how many things people try because of, like, again, the tripping up where they believe that because this guy can stand on this floor, they forget that that floor is not going to be there for this guy, and so on. And they try all sorts of things, like getting him to, like, oh, maybe if I get him to, like, here, maybe I can, like, get on top of him somehow and reach that key, but there's no way to actually do it. Like, it's just not possible. People have tried something, like, have done some weird, crazy things and really close to solving it, and, well, not really close. I think there was a way of doing it sort of like that before, when this door used to have, like, it used to just be a one tile thick platform where this door was, and now it's this giant pillar, so that, like, there's no way of getting one of the characters to a certain position where you could get that key after getting the other one, because it was important, because this was, like, it was important to me that the solution to this level was the intended solution. Like, it was important to me that there wasn't a way to kind of cheat this level. So, the solution to all of this madness of, like, how do I get one of these keys and still remain up, is to get this guy up to here, jump him up and swap, to create like a little bridge there between him and the key, get the key, and then still be able to get back up here, just so you can get the other key, like that. So now that you have both keys, level is essentially solved. You can stand under him because you remember there's no floor down there, and in order to get him back up here, you can use the side up here to get some extra height up to there. Now, it's not just that, like, if there's any failing to this level, in my opinion, is the fact that it's not just that bit of logic that can make it hard. Like, it's not just the fact that, oh, I need to stay up here and get both keys. That is what it boils down to, but there are some other minor things. Like, once you've done this, like, doing that is still a very, like, it's an arbitrary and hard to spot shape of, like, knowing that you need to put him exactly there. Like, there's nothing that really draws the player's attention to putting the character, like, here, or whatever. It's just a matter of working it out through logic. There's nothing that really points you to doing that. So I think that jump in sort of difficulty of finding a place to stand, alongside this sort of extra logical step, really compounds the difficulty to be perhaps more than I wanted. Even though I did want this level to be specifically a difficult challenge, I think it does go a tiny bit beyond what I would have wanted. And then after doing that, and coming around to save this guy like that, once you've made that logical step, it's like, getting him back up is a bit of a challenge because of, like, the nature of this floor here. Like, you have to move a little bit sideways like this and not be directly underneath him, and then jump sideways in order to get him back up, and it's very convoluted. It's still one of my favourite levels because I really like the shape of the level, and I like the solution, and I really do like its difficulty. I wish I could have done more levels like similar-ish to this level, with like 1 or 2 of those logical steps included, like on the ramp up to this level. Not into such a degree as like previous ones where I've taught you literally everything and then you know what to do the moment you come in. Definitely not. But just a couple of those things, like get you used to standing in places a little bit to the side in order to get you to jump up and stuff. And a few levels do that in small ways. But generally, I'm still really happy though. I still I really like the difficulty of this level. If anything, it's just a little tiny bit more than I would have liked, but generally I'm very happy with it. And then after that level, because I recognize how difficult that level is, and I wanted to express to the player that I'm aware of the difficulty of that level. I say, geez, that last level made my head hurt. And if it didn't, and you somehow, you whizzed through it with no problem, you just don't make too much of this line, you just think it's just a little narrow thing. But if you did really struggle on that level, as I kind of expect most players do, and I've seen most players do, especially in Let's Plays and stuff, it's always a level people are on for like half an hour plus or something like that. I want to recognize the struggle that they just went through. So this is what that line's about. Oh geez, that last level made my head hurt. This is more like it. Just a bunch of keys. I like keys. I understand keys. Simple, pattern-breaking level. Just a couple of keys and a door. No actual challenge. No puzzle. No anything. Just allows you to take a breather and go, alright, I'm done. I finally got past that level. And make you feel like you're getting a bit of progress down immediately afterwards, because you start here, you come in here, and it's just boom, boom, key, and moving on. It's like, oh, I'm getting going again. Cooking with gas now. We're moving along. Everything's getting done. And yeah, and this list just says keys or whatever. Again, it's just really emphasizing this just sort of dumb break that you can take after solving like a really difficult level that just came after a bunch of other levels as well. So, oh, that was fun. Feels like progress. I love it. And just, just this character's just sort of reveling in things just being a little bit simple. Then after he's had the break, we come back into a normal level, and he's like, oh, now I just need to work out, wait, this looks familiar. Haven't I been here already? And this level, you might recognize it, has the layout of previous level that looked exactly the same as this. And the only thing I've changed about this entire level, to not make it a complete copy of the previous level, is that this key is now only collectible by this character as opposed to by this character. So instead of the previous solution where you would do this, like that doesn't work anymore. Like you can't collect the key as this person, so that doesn't work. Instead, you've got to use the same level layout to solve a different problem, which is very possible after having already sort of learned that you can kind of, you don't have to always do towers in a strict just moving up kind of way. You can start to move to the side and use platforms. You can use that to get this guy up, because this is what you need to get him some height. So you can start to do this and get him higher up. And then that is more or less a solution. You grab that key, the key blocks aren't really significant here, and you can drop him back into this perfect little funnel spot to get him across like that. I say the key blocks aren't significant, they are significant in the fact that they keep you higher up, and then they have this nice effect in that they drop you down onto this spot. So I really like how this level just works both ways of just this one, literally just a binary change, like of just changing this key from being visible by character 1 to visible by character 2, That's the only change in this level, and yet the solution is not only completely different, but also works really nicely and still like flows really well with the shape and design of the level. And there's really just a design I stumbled across when I was just thinking to myself, what happens? It just occurred to me one day, what would happen if I just changed this key to be that? Would that change this level a lot? And I was just like, wow, there's this whole other level here. I want to include that later in the game, because not only is it like thematically symbolic of like a repeating level, like with this like minor little difference in it, where it allows me to do some cool narrative stuff. I'm like, oh, haven't I been here before already? I was like, oh no, wait, it was different. But also just that, just getting so much value out of something like such as a simple thing, like just essentially copying and pasting this level, changing this one little thing and getting so much more out of it. Like, I really, really like how that worked out. Alright, so here, this is just a tutorial level, essentially, of just teaching you a new mechanic. You can see, you start in this little gap here, there's nowhere else for you to move, you can't move up, can't move right, you can only move to the left here, and you walk through these invisible key block shapes. Like, they're shaped exactly like key blocks, but you can walk through them and they're a different colour. you might already get the idea in your head about what's going to happen when I pick up this key, but the idea of what I'm teaching you here is that you're forced to walk through these so that you can tell that they're not, you know, they're ethereal, they're not in reality, you can walk through them. And when you pick up this key, they fade in, become very solidly coloured, and then you try and walk back through them, you can't, you can stand on them. Very, very simple way of just very clearly demonstrating mechanic. And here I use this, the fun consequence of like the key blocks and the reverse key blocks, as I kind of call them, is that if you include both of those things in a level, you can essentially create two different worlds. I mean, I know the game is already essentially about that when you swap between the two characters, but you create two alternate worlds in a different sense of when you pick up a key, suddenly the world changes, all of the key blocks disappear and all the reverse key blocks fade in and become real. And so like, it's like the same sort of mechanic as swapping between the two dudes and seeing the two different worlds, but expressed in a different way of when you pick up this key, everything changes. Now in this level you can see the outlines of the reverse key blocks, and it was important for me that you could see those and know where the blocks were going to fade in. And so it's very, again, there's kind of a bit of a trap set here where you can just run down here, think to pick up the key without thinking of anything else, and then you get completely stuck in here. Like the key blocks fade, when the key blocks fade in, they exist for both characters, like the same as the regular key blocks exist and don't exist for both characters. And there's no way to get him out, and you need to get him out because he's the only one who can reach the door. So, with that in mind, what you need to do first of all is get this guy into this room ahead of time, so that when you do collect this key, you have a very simple way out that you already know a lot about, just using the same old towering method to get over and above those 3 blocks and come up here. And now what's interesting is when I start to move up these when I start to move up this staircase, this text comes up here which says, "Wait, don't leave me," because this character is like trapped in a cage. That would come up, by the way, even if you left the other character in there and came up here, even though there was no door here and you couldn't technically leave. Like, that text comes up either way. It's like each character does the same thing. Like, I can show what I mean. Like, if I do that, like, the same text comes up where it's like, "Oh, wait, don't leave me." And, I thought that was interesting because it makes players almost feel a little bit bad about solving this level. Like, a lot of players are just like, "Oh, what? I don't want to leave him," but then like there's no way of getting him to come with you anyway. And it just makes you start to think a little bit more of every time you go through these rooms you go through as one character and you leave like potentially 2 to 3 other characters behind. Generally only 1, but like, you know what I mean? And you go through because there's no other way to progress in the game, and that's what the text says. It says, well, there was no other way to progress. That's it. You had to do it. You're playing the game. It's like, did you? You could have just stopped there. You know, why did you go on anyway? And it's because you don't have that much emotional attachment to these guys, really. They're just little dudes on the screen or whatever. You don't stop that much emotionally in them. You just want to play the game. You want to see where it goes, so you're gonna go through the door anyway. And I don't know. I think that's an interesting thing about the nature of game characters and our relationships to them. Anyway, moving on. I'm not 100% happy with the design of this level. The idea of this level is there's this giant pillar of reverse key blocks in the middle that you can get past, and there's kind of a trap here as well. You can just run, pick up that key, but then like you're stuck. You need to be able to get back, and like there's no way, like he's not high enough here to be able to help you get over those blocks. And he gets stuck behind them as well. So to cut a very long story about this level short, the idea of it is you need to create a way of setting up the people in a way that allows you to get back after you've grabbed the key as this dude. So you come down here and you do a bunch of stuff with these guys. So I can jump up here to get him a little bit higher. I'm going to position him, I think, there. Yep. And use him to jump across, grab the key, and then you can jump back on him, get across, and you're at the door. The level is constructed in a way to try and highlight the ideal positions where you want to stand. Like this, you can see, like, this guy here has this little pillar sticking up out of nowhere, but it's a little, like, it's still a little bit of a logical jump you need to make to actually know to jump to be able to use him. But again, that can come from just, you know, learning the environment and thinking about it. Like, I don't want to make everything always super clear. And it forms this little staircase here. You can see it's quite clear. This guy, it's less obvious where he needs to be. And there can be a problem here as well of, like, if you do this and you get it all set up, but then, like, oh, maybe that guy's a little bit off and you wanted to adjust him, and you do something like that where you swap to move to another guy, but then you swap to this guy first and he drops down out of place. It's like, oh, now you have to go back to set him up kind of thing, and it's a little bit of a pain. And a lot of players don't even get this solution. They do, I forget what the solution is because it's really, like, loose and arbitrary or whatever, but it eventually, like, involves not using the first guy to get this guy to where he is now, and you just use, like, the third guy by getting him across stood over here and then, like, jumping him across. Let's see if I can kind of remember how it works. Like you do this sort of thing. I think, well, that almost worked, but yeah, the fact that you can, like, almost solve it with kind of, like, weird solutions, and there is a solution like that that does work as well. Again, like, makes this level feel like a bit, I don't know, it's not as strongly designed as a lot of the rest of the game, in my opinion. Anyway, as I said, the solution here is to get this all neatly set up and ready and waiting so that when this guy comes over here and grabs his key, it's a very simple way back. That's that level. And then this level, again, is another thing like, trying to think what the level was now. Like the level with the with the huge gap where you just use the one guy to carry him all the way across is something that I wanted to do just to explore a truth about the mechanics and something that is true about this universe. This universe is in the game universe, as in this game universe. And that's that when you pick up a key, or the key blocks disappear. So what would a level be like if it was made up entirely out of key blocks? And that's essentially what we have here. It's not completely. The level existed in a slightly different form in the original perspective, but was, like, super execution heavy, because it was all about... I mean, let me explain what this one's about, for example. Like, a lot of players rush into this level, and this is a trap that actually catches a lot more people than I expected it to. They run to grab a key, again, because keys, like, you know, they need keys to progress, right? And they try and collect all the keys, and then it's like, oh, the whole level disappears when we do that. Some players don't catch on right away, and will actually spend a long time, like, doing this sort of thing, trying to actually get all of the keys, without realizing that the door is actually open from the start. Like, if you look down the bottom left there, like, the door is already open. You don't need these keys. Only level where that's the case. But you don't actually need these keys to open this door. And actually, when you pick up a key, you'll see that reverse key blocks fade in around the door and it locks you out. So the only way to solve the level is to get none of the keys, which is completely the reverse of everything you've been doing so far. Every time you've been in a level, you need to get the keys, and then you go through the door. And then this reverses that, like, expectation, and suddenly you have to avoid the keys and approach the level differently. And now back to what I was saying about how this level was implemented in the original perspective, was that you would have to, like, jump over the keys, or like crawl, like, really tightly under the keys, and it was all just sort of little simple executional things of, like, dodging around the keys. But that, again, wasn't really fitting with the puzzly nature of the game, and so this became more of a slightly more cerebral version of that, where you're just trying to think of how to sort of cleanly do what I'm doing here and just sort of avoid these keys by using this other guy to sort of move you around like that and get you across here. Now, this is the only point in the game where you have to do that sort of motion as well that I was talking about earlier, where you kind of waddle along the guy, because I know I can't jump here, and that was the point. This was meant to be the point when you would do that for the first time. It was never really intended for you to want to do this before. It just, you know, it happened to also be a viable solution for a bunch of other, like, rooms for doing that kind of bridging mechanic. But this was the level where that was intended to be sort of introduced as a thing, where you would kind of do this because you want to be careful and not touch that key that's above you until you get to here, and then you kind of save. There were actually more keys in this level when I first made it, but like it was just a bit, again, like it was just too executionally stressful. And like there were a bunch of keys, like after you got down from here, there was a key like where the character is stood now, and like one here that you would have to like jump over, so you would have to do like this, and then you were there. And I didn't like that because like after going through all that lot of careful maneuvering to even get to this point, to just sort of slip up a tiny little bit because of a dumb like mistimed jump or something and hit a key, lock that away, and then have to restart the level was a huge pain in the ass. So when you drop down off this guy now, you just have a very clear, clean and safe, nice, and I really like how it works out because it's this nice, like, almost like celebratory, like, run to the finish of having solved the level. Nothing really else that can go wrong unless you fell down there, I guess, but that's kind of annoying me. And then you go through there, and that's that level. And that is the end of part 4. Actually, well, before I stop this episode, take a moment to say here, you'll notice that the music has actually changed. This is the beginning of kind of Act 2 of the game, I guess. And I'm introducing this big dude over here. And the music has changed, and I'll talk more about that at the start of the next episode, which I hope you guys will join me for next time. So yeah, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you then in a bit.